I'm going to give you a little taste of one of the things that we've been working with in the Competence Centre, scenario planning. So I've got 10 minutes to try and share this concept with you. So hopefully we'll get a feeling for it in that time. Okay, very briefly, many of you will have heard of scenario planning, but perhaps it's new for some. It's a futures thinking method. Actually, it's a strategic planning tool that came from the defence sector back in the 1950s, and then was used in business, and now is a planning method used very much by national governments and little competence centres too. So just to show you that we can do one or two interesting things as well. It's very much an art and not a science. And I think what's important, it's about imagining different possible futures, not trying to narrow things down and predict the correct one. The traditional tools often used when we're looking at the future by businesses or organisations try to narrow things, get a point. That is what we think is going to happen. What's different here is about opening up and imagining all possible futures. There needs to be some logic or reason, but it's about not getting the future wrong rather than getting it right, if you see the difference. And I like the final one. It's the development of structured imaginings. So we're allowed to be creative within a structure about how the world might look in our particular field at some point in the future. And I haven't got much time to tell you the process, but there is one. There's a number of logical steps that you go through. And in the Competence Centre, as a scenario planning team, we met every now and then and tried to take ourselves through this process. Choosing a main topic that's of interest, ours of course was drugs. We chose a date, 2022. You spend then some time thinking about key environmental forces that impact on drugs that you believe will in the future. You pull out those that are most uncertain and important as part of the process. And then, using a couple of those, you select what's called a matrix, which I'll show you in a moment, and build some scenarios. You build some possible future pictures. Once you've got those, you then have the opportunity to work with your future imaginings and think, well, what could that mean for us as a competence centre? If we think this could happen, what do we need to be doing today so that we're prepared? Or can do some forebygging, perhaps. So I mentioned a matrix. This is an example. I said some big people do it. In the UK, the government has run a huge drug futures project in the UK. Now, I've just taken their matrix because I thought it was quite interesting. What they've pulled out here are elements they think are important for drug use in the UK in 2025, this is, and things they think are really uncertain. So that's what these, and what they say, one is government policy, the regulation of drug use in 20 years' time. And they say it's really unsure or uncertain whether government policy will be evidence-based or whether government policy will be view-based or perhaps ideologically based, which I thought was quite interesting, which is why I'm sharing this one. And then the other is about drug use. They weren't sure in the UK. They thought it would be very uncertain and interesting whether drug use is more linked to lifestyle or whether drug use is more kind of around the medical side and treatment. As I say, these are just parameters. There's no right or wrong here. And just briefly what they were saying about the evidence versus the view-based government policy, because I think we hear a lot about evidence-based practice, and I thought this was interesting that the government itself was thinking about evidence-based policy making. And what they said in the UK, that if it's evidence-based policy making, it's informed by current scientific knowledge, considered in the light of the harms and the benefits of the individual, community, society, linked to the use of different drugs. If it's view or opinion-based policy, it's more arbitrary, historic and moralistic. It isn't based on science or policy, it's more based on the way we've traditionally done it, and tends to be about controlling drugs based on the fact that they're psychoactive rather than on their effects. So this is a big government document, if anyone's interested, from the UK, from the Office of Science and Technology, which is also interesting, seeing as this is a creative rather than a scientific process that they've used. And in our little competence centre, we've done one too. And we've done it for Norway. But we were actually a bit earlier than the UK. We started as in 2002. So our 20 years was 2022. We chose a different matrix. We thought in Norway it'd be interesting, and one of the uncertainties was how the economy would be in 20 years, and that might impact on drug use. Strong economy or not so strong. We also thought about till you only head of those middle, how many drugs are going to be around, and that could be, there could be a lot more around, or it could be quite low availability. And then what you do is you make scenarios or stories using those parameters. And then you have to give them a name, and it has to be something a bit catchy or a bit funny. So these were the names of our 4 scenarios. I've only got time. I'm going to give you just a little taster of one of those scenarios, okay? Helsefrik. And this was a world in 2022, well not a world, it's Norway, in a Norwegian world in 2022, where there's a good, strong economy and there aren't many drugs around, okay? So it could be quite ideal in a way. And we called this one health food. And I'm going to just read a bit to you. It was back in the first decade of the 20th century, in reaction to the slow but steady growth in illegal drug use by Norwegian young people, that the powerful alcohol industry chose to smash its biggest competitor and put millions into a 3-year druggies campaign to convince teens that drug use is the ultimate in uncool. Now this proved rather successful, and what happened was that while drinking increased, illegal drugs did proportionately decrease in use. By 2013, with North Sea oil supplies running out, the government needed a new national income generating plan, and the focus moved to tourism. This was when Norway started to become a health farm for the new global elite. The whole nation evolving into a massive bunad-wearing rehabilitation service, pandering to the needs and fantasies of the international burnouts, the world wealthy who were escaping from the Nike towns and shopping malls of the global village. As you well know, Norway developed into a retroscape health freak zone and was the first country to add nicotine to the illegal drugs list in 2014. The Lofoten Islands became a gated therapeutic community where the rich recuperated from their excesses. Norway managed to escape the global recession of 2016-17 through this strategy. Now, in 2022, external healthy appearance is a national priority. Obesity is outlawed and stigmatised as not being in keeping with the new national image. Norway maintains its first place in the quality of life tables by exporting any leftover problem drug users at high expense for neuron transplant surgery in Lithuania. An increase in digital stress and technological addictions has left addiction services with a glut of young middle-class patients, a particularly worrying group being the lost, those who seem to have disappeared somewhere in virtual reality.